Hi all, I just wanted to follow up with everyone, send out a brief video and give some general feedback about the first set of literary analysis papers as well as the first module in general. Overall, people did great with the discussion board posts. I try to grade those within 5 days. If you haven't gotten a grade yet, it may be that you didn't do 2 responses in addition to your main post. Because those don't show up in my grader feed. So if you didn't do it this time, make sure you do that next time. It's a minor penalty to forget one, but it's still something that can add up. Make sure that you observe the deadlines for quizzes, papers, and discussion boards. Those are all on the course schedule. I try to be flexible if you request an extension because of an emergency. However, in general, you should aspire to turn everything in on time. I know that some of you are having problems with the Smarter Proctoring link. That should be working now. If it doesn't work for you, please let me know. One more quick announcement before I get to the papers. I spoke with the person who designed this course yesterday, and he told me that he experienced some issues with the questions on the quizzes. They should all be fixed now, but if you're ever doing a quiz or an exam, and you see a question that shouldn't be there, maybe it showed up from a different module, this shouldn't be a problem, but just email me and let me know so I can address it and you won't be penalized for not knowing it. Quizzes should always be on the readings from the module that you're working on. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about the papers. The most important thing in this class for succeeding on papers is reading my comments. If you don't read the things that I'm suggesting you work on, then you're not going to improve in your writing and analysis over the course of the semester. I've been impressed with your ability to close read so far, and I'm sure that everybody will be writing very successful papers by the end of the semester if they aren't already. So you'll notice that I simplified the rubric that the moderator provided. There are 4 main categories: content, which counts the most, organization, style, and grammar and mechanics. Now, I'm just going to let you know some of the most common errors I see. First of all, make sure you do 2 responses for the literary analyses. Some people are doing 3, some people are doing 1. You need to do 2. Second, don't treat these like homework questions. They are analyses, they are essays. So make sure that you have a central argument for each one that directly responds to the prompt. I'm not looking for a plot summary. I've read these stories. What I'm interested in is your interpretation of the story, and in particular what the author is doing. Most of your sentences, for that reason, should foreground the author as the subject. Twain makes an argument about the need to have formal education and street smarts, for example. That would be a good thesis statement. In fact, a couple students had one similar to that. I want you to establish a few claims. So you have your main thesis and your intro, and each body paragraph begins with an argument as well. That first sentence of each body paragraph should relate back to your thesis. So in the example I just gave, your first body paragraph might be something about how Twain suggests formal education is important, what character he uses to exemplify that. You're making it easier if you set it up this way, because then you can move on to providing textual evidence, and then you can analyze that textual evidence. Another content issue, in your concluding sentence, or a paragraph if you want to have a paragraph, don't just repeat what you've already said. There's no point in repeating something you've already said. Instead, maybe try to think about it in a bigger picture. So if we're talking about Twain, we're talking turn of the century or late 19th century. So maybe think about how, if you're talking about his views on education, you might think in terms of this is just after the Civil War, we're still expanding westward, we're still kind of forming our identity as a country, we're reunifying, so maybe he's making these arguments about education because he's trying to shape the national character or encourage Americans to be the best versions of themselves, something along those lines. All right, those are the main things for content. Have a clear thesis, avoid plot summary, don't repeat yourself. The biggest issue with this paper was organization, which I've alluded to already. Don't just write a big block of text that's stream of consciousness. You need to organize. If you have a clear thesis statement, it's going to kind of provide a roadmap for the rest of your paper. So make sure you have an intro and body paragraphs. Make sure each paragraph, each body paragraph, opens with a topic sentence in the form of a claim. That means it has to be an argument. Don't open with a quote. Don't open with a fact. Don't open with something about the plot or something that happens. It needs to be an argument, okay? That way it'll be much easier to finish the paragraph. You'll know what you need to do to support that argument that you've just made, all right? So that's organization. That's the number one biggest concern. Now, the third category is style. This refers to how your writing sounds. You know, is it clear? Is it beautiful? Is it sophisticated? Does it sound like you? Does it sound natural? The number one issue I see has to do with wordiness. When you're being too verbose, when you're using too many words to make a point, it takes away from the clarity of your writing. So the best way to fix this, again, this is a literary analysis, so you're talking about what the author is doing. When possible, you want to put a person in the subject of your sentence and then use an active verb. Don't use a verb to be. Don't use a passive verb. So a lot of times you're talking about what the author is doing. I know it's your opinion of what the author is doing. You don't have to say that, but that's still what you're doing. So Twain suggests X. Twain uses this character to comment on Y. Those kinds of sentences have really good clarity because they have a person in the subject position and an action in the verb position. An unclear sentence would be, one reason that this character is perceived as controversial is because, do you see how long it's taking me to get to the main point of the sentence? That's a sentence that feels wordy and loses clarity. So keep them concise and clear. Sometimes you might put a character in the subject position. That's fine too, okay? Now with your grammar and mechanics, the main issues have to do with using proper MLA citation format. Some of you nailed it. If you're not sure how to do works cited or how to do in-text citations properly, a really good resource is the OWL at Purdue. If you Google OWL, like the bird, Purdue, P-U-R-D-U-E, and MLA, all the details for proper citation will come up, okay? You will need to have a separate citation entry for each work you use, so you don't want to just cite the anthology. Make sure you proofread carefully, and when you're discussing plot events, make sure you're using present tense. Jim Smiley says, not Jim Smiley said. Okay? Twain suggests. Now you could say Twain wrote the story. That happened outside of the story, but if it's inside the story, Twain implies through this character, blah, 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 you're using present tense. You'll get the hang of it. All right, I think that's it for now. And if you have questions, as always, please feel free to email me, and I look forward to reading your next work.